Greetings, my fellow traditionalist Catholics. This is Sergio Becerra II, and welcome back to my channel. So, for this video, I'm going to be talking about one saint that has caught my attention for some time and have been interested in it. And I've been studying on this one saint for about, I would say, a month and a half or more than that, I would say. So, we're going to be talking about Saint Simon of Trent, a 2-year-old boy that was martyred at the hands of Jews in the Italian town of Trent, which would later be the site where the Council of Trent took place. But the name Trent has been renamed to Trentino to this very day. But Trent became the site of a horrific murder that took place in 1475. And this all happened in March of that year, just a week prior to Easter of that year. So let's talk about this young boy by the name of Simon. I had to pull up his information. Let's see. Born on November 26, 1472. Died, which was his murder, March 24th, 1475, at age 2. And Trent was also the place of a prince bishopric. That means the town was under the control of a prince bishop. And the current prince bishop at the time when this murder took place was a German prince bishop by the name of Johannes. Let me see. I always have trouble pronouncing some names. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Johannes Hinderbach, who had total. Oh, who had. I'm sorry. The name of the prince bishop was Johannes Hinderbach, who was the Prince Bishop of Trent at the time, who had ultimate jurisdiction by the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick III. So, so a week before this murder took place, there was a sermon by a Franciscan friar who was later beatified. The friar's name was Bernardine of Feltre, who gave a sermon about the Jewish community in the town at the time. I'm sorry. I know this. I know I have to look up this poor child's information because a lot of it was hard for me to understand. Okay, he was talk. He was given a sermon about the Jews in the town of the time. I'm sorry. Let me start over. So Bernardine of Feltre was given a sermon the week before Easter about the Jewish community that was living in the city, and of course vilifying them. But then at one point within the sermon, he said that the Jews around this time, which was Easter, and then of course the Jewish holiday Passover, which Bernardine said that the Jews may kidnap your children for like some sort of Jewish ritual, which of course end up happening. I'm sorry if I'm slowing down, trying to get the words out of my mouth as possible. So apparently, just the so after that sermon took place, within a couple of days, a 2-year-old boy by the name of Simon, who somehow was just playing, apparently was lured by a Jewish man by the name of Tobias, who was a Jewish physician. Apparently, lured the kid away from his mother to him, and at one point, the boy began crying, calling for his mother, and took the boy into his home and like entertained him with a shining coin. And then, of course, the community leader of the Jewish community in Trent by the name of Samuel, who was a moneylender. And then, of course, there was a third man involved. Let me see, by the name of Engel. So apparently, Simon was lured by Tobias, who was the Jewish physician, of course, probably one of the many community leaders like Samuel, lured this boy into his home, and apparently did began to torture this poor boy in a mockery of the passion of Jesus Christ by doing a sacrificial ritual known as a blood libel, because it looks like what Bernardine and Feltre said was true, that telling the people within the community, the Christian community, of course, that Jews would start going around looking for children to take them away and do God knows what. And of course, Simon was the proof right there. But Bernardine's Feltre was nothing more than to vilify the Jewish community. So this poor boy, Simon, lured away by Tobias, Samuel, and many others, did a mockery of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. This was their way of hating on Christians and making a mockery of Christ's life, including Christ's crucifixion. It is said that tools were used to crucify this poor boy, hands, feet, and even did the side wound by piercing to his sides. It was said that this boy was suffering a lot, that his eyes began to roll back, knowing that it was over for him, what was reported. Apparently just gave up his spirit. An innocent 2-year-old boy killed. And his body was later thrown inside a water well underneath Tobias's home, which would later be discovered within a few days because the boy's father had asked the Prince Bishop for help, that his boy went missing. So between Simon's parents, family members, and everyone else in Trent, they began looking for this boy. No sign, but I forget who else. Probably the boy's father did tell. I don't remember if it was the Prince Bishop or someone else, but or a city leader within Trent, to see if the Jews have anything to do with it. So now the Jewish community is getting involved in the search, thinking that they may be framed for the boy's disappearance and then his body later being found. So by Good Friday, as the story has been said, a cook, I think of a cook that worked under Tobias, apparently found the boy's body in the water. So the boy's body was retrieved and it was taken to a hospital to be examined, and by the physician's shock, saw puncture wounds in the boy's body. So, to be honest with you, I don't know if the Jewish community used a cross or decided to use piercing tools on the boy's body, because I've seen a lot of pictures like depicting that the boy was like literally crucified to a cross, but it looked like piercing tools may have been used. But then there's a lot of propagated imagery, probably uh, either by the Italians or Germans when this story first took hold. So the Jewish community ended up, a lot of people within the Jewish community ended up getting arrested. They were put to torture by the Inquisition, and then finally, it looks like 15 people, including Samuel, Tobias, and many others, were later officially arrested and then later put to death by being burned at the stake. Now, yeah, so Samuel and many others, at least a total of 15 people, including Samuel, the community later was tried, found guilty, executed, and burned at the stake. Now, as for Tobias, who was also part of it, legend has it, if this is true, the way they executed him was like the most gruesome ever, since this had to be done behind the walls of a prison, not up front. They said he was tied upside down with his legs stretched out, and the executioner, who they had to, that the officials needed to get, that had the the courage without being disgusted to perform this one execution, which was sawing the man in half with a very large saw, started from the groin area all the way to his face, splitting him in half. And what was reported that the cries, the shouting, the screams of the worst pain ever inflicted. Even the people that were witness to this execution of Tobias being sawed in half were also disgusted. Even didn't even want to look, is what the legend has said. However, one Jewish man by the name of Israel, like the name of the country, apparently he was among those that was allowed to convert to Christianity, but uh, it didn't last long because within a year or two after this murder took place, apparently someone within the Jewish community said that he too had a role in in this poor murder of Simon, and therefore he was later executed. Now, it was also said that a number of women were also uh, said to have taken part in this blood libel ritual, but their excuse was since they were women, they couldn't participate because of their gender, so they were let go. Once this poor boy was uh, laid to rest, they did mention, what is it, relics. I don't know what relics that this poor boy had. I don't know for sure. There's no information that says about what relics that Simon had at the time of his murder. I don't know if it was the torturing instruments that were used to inflict pain on him by putting puncture holes in him, or probably the wounds that had inflicted on him that's on his body. I'm not sure, but a church was erected in Trent called the Church of Saint Peter and Saint Paul, and then and a tomb was erected for this poor boy. Within days after, there were reports of miracles at this boy's tomb. So, under the jurisdiction of the Prince Bishop of Trent, that would be Johannes Hinderbach, actually venerated this boy as a saint and a martyr. I know some are going to ask, how can a Prince Bishop or anyone within the Catholic clergy make this boy a saint without approval from the Pope? I know that Pope Sixtus IV was Pope at the time when this execution had occurred, and I know there was an investigation called by Sixtus in regards to how this horrific murder took place. I know some of the stuff I've been reading is kind of complicated because look, I'm not an investigator. I don't know how it all went down at the end, but since he was the Prince Bishop and had the jurisdiction, as far as I understand, that Simon was venerated as a saint by Hinderbach and was declared also a martyr because he was killed at the hands of Jews. Now, I just want to point forward here. I'm not prejudiced nor anti-Semitic towards the Jewish community. I'm not. I'm none of that towards Jews. None of that. I have nothing against Jews, but this story is just horrific. So yeah. So as I have said, days after this poor boy was laid to rest in a tomb, along with his relics, whatever they were, miracles began to happen. At least a report of 100, as I understood. So therefore, Hinderbach venerated him as a saint immediately and declared his death as martyrdom. And it was, of course, put in the book of martyrology, like with a list of many saints who have died all in the name of Christ. So this is like one story that has fascinated me a lot. I mean, I've only heard the name Saint Simon in general, but all I found were, of course, just the name Saint Simon the Apostle. That's about it. Tried my best to look up the information of this poor boy. However, there are propagated photos showing the poor boy already crucified. And then another thing that caught my eye, that you had at least like two or three Jews that had a pig in the middle of the room. One person underneath the pig, sucking on the pig's breast. No doubt it was a female pig, but it shows one person sucking on the pig's breast, and then you have another that was standing behind the pig, uh, ingesting uh, the pig's feces into his mouth, like it was swallowing it. I mean, eating it. I mean, you can find the imagery if you were to go onto St. Simon's Wikipedia account. Now, even though Wikipedia is not really to be taken serious as like a source of information, because we don't know any of this stuff is accurate, because I did as much research as I can, even the research on YouTube. So far, from everything I've done, it looks like this story seems really accurate. I'm sorry, I got sunlight facing me. I have to move the camera. Yeah, I don't take Wikipedia that serious, even though I had to look it up. But then after all the other research I did, even other YouTube videos so far, this has like been the most, everything I found seems the story has been 100% accurate about how this poor boy died. But the sad part was, um, under the heretical Vatican II sect, they later suppressed his feast day, and apparently his feast day falls on March 24th, the day this poor boy died. Now, under documents and books under the Vatican II sect, which was suppressed in 1965 by anti-Pope Paul VI, apparently under some documents and books, they refer to him as Blessed Simon of Trent. Now, I know there's another thing I've looked up, which I'm kind of confused. I don't know how accurate this is. Apparently, he was beatified as a blessed in 1588 by Paul Sixtus V. But anti-Pope Paul VI suppressed his feast day in 1965. Since even though he was venerated as a saint, there's no process how to reverse a person's canonization, but the feast day can be suppressed. So this is one story I've seen. So I've been interested until I saw one video on Instagram talking about this poor boy. So, like I said about that propagated picture, you can find on his Wikipedia account, on the Wikipedia page, showing a couple of Jews, like I said, that have the boy already crucified, and they got a pig right in front of them. Well, even though the Jewish community, even though Jews don't eat pork, but there's an image of a pig. You got one person underneath sucking on the breast milk of the pig and the other eating the pig's excrements. It's droppings, which I don't quite understand. I don't know if that's even true or not, but just that imagery, I just find to be very odd. I mean, this is a 2-year-old boy that died for nothing, and yet his feast day and his history are just being scrubbed away by Vatican II. But you know what? His story will not be forgotten for those that follow the traditional Catholic faith, the true Catholic faith, who know who this poor boy was. But to be honest with you, like I said, I did as much information as possible, even though I looked at Wikipedia and I don't even take Wikipedia seriously because who knows if the church had anything to do with his history within the Wikipedia page. I don't know. As much information as I found, that's what's being said about his history, how the Vatican II sect tried to scrub away his feast day because they reopened his case, looked into the investigation, and they're claiming they say this was uh, that the case against the Jews that said to have murdered him. They're claiming it was not true, that it was nothing more than an act of prejudice within Trent and within the Prince Bishopric of under Johannes Hinderbach, believing that they're making the claim there's no evidence that Jews didn't kill this poor boy when, even though the confessions that were made were false, was what they're saying. So the Vatican II sect is saying that and other historical accounts are saying that the confessions of this poor boy getting killed at the hands of Jews, I think they falsely claimed that they did it just to save themselves, but in the end, they ended up paying the price, as far as I know. Again, I'm sorry. I'm if I'm talking so slow, trying to get as much words out of my mouth and trying to describe this whole story about poor Saint Simon. But yet, the Vatican II sect ended up suppressing his feast day, even though there's no way to reverse the canonization. Even though Hinderbach was the one who venerated him, and yet they're trying to scrub away his past as possible. It's another thing about that: the Vatican II sect did seal off the access to Simon's tomb, but when I've also reading that they may have reopened the tomb sometime in 2022. Yeah, so it seems that access to St. Simon's tomb has not been reopened, even though they closed it off, and that people have no access to the tomb because, as I have said, that miracles had happened. And of course, there's evidence of miracles that it did occur at the tomb. So I don't know why the Vatican II sect would try to say this is nothing more than an act of prejudice, saying there's no evidence that Jews did anything. But uh, all like I said, there was a lot of finger pointing towards the Jewish community at the time when this had occurred. Countries like Italy, well, throughout Italy, because Trent was the Italian town at the time. Of course, that story reached all over Italy. Uh, Germany and Austria heard about this horrific story, and it ended up turning into a cult to celebrate. Well, I'm sorry, not celebrate. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm saying celebrate for. I'm sorry. Again, I'm trying to get the words out of my mouth as much as possible, even though I'm talking slow. They were, well, supportive, I meant to say, supportive of this poor boy in mourning the loss of this poor boy, which is what I'm trying to say, not celebrate. I don't know why I said celebrate. I know I sound boring right now talking so slow. Again, I'm doing much as the best as possible. So cold was formed around this poor boy's tomb, and of course the support he was getting, knowing that miracles had happened. That's why he was venerated as a saint. And it's a very sad story. And it's said that Vatican II has suppressed his feast day and everything else. But even though they closed off his tomb, nobody can go near it. But now his tomb has been reopened, is what I understood. So you all tell me what you think about Saint Simon of Trent. Comment below, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell beside it, and stay tuned for future updates. So all I can say is this: Saint Simon of Trent, pray for us. I apologize once again, talking so slow, trying to get the words out of my mouth, correct words, the right correct words as much as possible. I'm sorry, I got so much sunlight coming in, even though the shades are closed. I know you can barely see my face. So again, Saint Simon, pray for us, and stay tuned for future updates. I apologize again. I don't know why I'm slowing down. Trying to, because I've been wanting to do this story for some time now, and you all tell me what you think in the comments below. All right, this wraps it up on who is Saint Simon of Trent, and now hopefully you understand the history. And if you still have a hard time understanding what I was trying to say, go ahead, look up videos you can find also on YouTube that by simply typing in Simon of Trent, and you'll find as much information as possible. All right, this wraps it up for this video. Take care now. Bye.